In 2012, an ordinary summer turned into an international legal storm that rocked both the UK and Indonesia. The quiet tropical island of Bali, known for its serene beaches and spiritual allure, became the center of a chilling drug bust involving 3 British nationals. The year marked the beginning of one of the most controversial and widely discussed drug smuggling cases in Southeast Asia. Indonesia, notorious for its zero-tolerance policy on narcotics, was already a risky place for drug-related activity. Yet, amid warnings and strict enforcement, a criminal operation unfolded that caught global attention. The events that followed exposed not only the severity of Indonesia's drug laws, but also the personal stories, controversies, and complications that made this case a complex and emotionally charged narrative. At the heart of the Bali smuggling case were 3 British nationals, each with very different backgrounds, but tied to the same explosive situation. Lindsay Sandiford, a 56-year-old grandmother and former legal worker from Cheltenham, was portrayed as the mule. She claimed she had been forced to carry drugs under threats to her family. Julian and Rachel Dougall, a couple living in Bali with their daughter, were seen as more embedded in the island's underworld. Authorities believed Ponder was set to receive the drugs Sandiford brought into the country, while Dougall was implicated through proximity. To many, Sandiford seemed the least likely drug trafficker, middle-aged, soft-spoken, and without a criminal record. Ponder and Dougall, by contrast, had a more cosmopolitan and party-centric lifestyle, which raised suspicions about their deeper involvement in drug trade circles. However, perceptions can be deceiving. While Sandiford's claims of coercion gained some public sympathy, Indonesian prosecutors painted a picture of conscious participation. Sandiford's willingness to cooperate may have lessened her moral guilt in the public eye, but it didn't affect the court's harsh verdicts. This trio, linked by drugs, deception, and a paradise-turned prison, soon faced the full force of a legal system with little mercy for those caught in its net. On May 19, 2012, Lindsay Sandiford landed at Bali's Ngurah Rai International Airport after a flight from Bangkok. She was calm, but customs officials had been tipped off and were waiting. A routine search of her suitcase uncovered 4.8 kilograms of cocaine concealed in hidden compartments. The street value was estimated at £1.6 million. The arrest was immediate. Indonesia's strict anti-drug laws meant Sandiford was in deep trouble. While still at the airport, she admitted the drugs were hers, but claimed she had been forced to carry them by a criminal gang who threatened her family. This claim didn't spare her from detention. She was transferred to Karabokan prison, where she began a legal fight that would attract global media. It was revealed that Sandiford had no prior convictions and was in financial distress. She said she'd been manipulated and coerced, not lured by profit. Regardless of motive, Indonesian law is clear. Drug trafficking over a certain threshold carries the death penalty. Sandiford's arrest marked the beginning of a legal spiral, and her public cooperation became part of a broader investigation. Yet, from the moment the cocaine was discovered, the outcome seemed bleak. Indonesia had little patience for excuses when it came to narcotics. Following her arrest, Sandiford agreed to work with Indonesian authorities in a daring sting operation. She arranged to deliver a dummy package to Julian, who was believed to be the intended recipient of the cocaine. Surveillance was tight, and the operation led to Ponder's arrest shortly after receiving the package. The sting also led police to Rachel Dougall, Ponder's partner, at their luxury villa in Bali. The couple was living a relatively lavish lifestyle, which fueled suspicions that they were involved in more than just recreational drug use. During the raid, authorities found small quantities of hashish, adding to the evidence. The successful sting gave Indonesian officials what they wanted: more suspects. Sandiford hoped her cooperation would earn her leniency, but that wasn't guaranteed. In Indonesia, even informants can face capital punishment if the quantity of drugs is deemed severe. International observers noted how quickly the arrests unfolded. The sting helped police connect the dots, but it also raised concerns about Sandiford's legal vulnerability. Her cooperation made her appear helpful, yet she remained the one who physically brought drugs into the country. In the Indonesian justice system, that distinction carried deadly weight. The sting might have sealed others' fates, but it did little to alter hers. After the sting, Julian and Rachel Dougall were swiftly arrested by Indonesian police. The couple had been residing in Bali, enjoying a comfortable lifestyle that, in hindsight, raised questions about their income sources. At their villa, police discovered a small amount of hashish, adding fuel to allegations of deeper drug involvement. Authorities saw Ponder as a key figure in the smuggling operation. He was the one Sandiford had been directed to meet, and the sting implicated him as the intended recipient of the cocaine. Dougall, though not caught with narcotics herself, was detained under suspicion of complicity. She denied any involvement and insisted she was unaware of the operation. Their arrests made headlines in both the UK and Indonesia. Dougall's family launched public appeals, describing her as a mother who had made poor choices in partners but was not a criminal. Despite the sympathetic portrayal, she received a 1-year prison sentence for failing to report a crime. Ponder, facing more substantial evidence, was sentenced to 6 years. The disparity in sentencing highlighted Indonesia's zero-tolerance policy and its focus on punishing those in possession or direct coordination. For the Indonesian government, the arrests were proof that foreign traffickers would be rooted out and punished, no matter their nationality. Indonesian investigators believe the Bali drug case went beyond just one smuggling attempt. They suspected Lindsay Sandiford, Julian and Rachel Dougall were part of a wider international drug network operating out of Southeast Asia, with links tracing from Thailand to Indonesia and potentially back to the UK. Authorities were convinced that the three weren't acting alone. Sandiford was considered the courier, while Ponder was believed to be a local distributor or recipient. Dougall's role remained unclear, but her close association with Ponder drew suspicion. Despite Sandiford's claims of coercion, Indonesian police emphasized that she was still directly responsible for bringing narcotics into the country. No further arrests of British nationals were made, but the case intensified scrutiny on expats living in Bali. Some were questioned, and new protocols were introduced to tighten surveillance at airports and shipping routes. For Indonesian law enforcement, the bust demonstrated that even seemingly small smuggling operations could be part of a much bigger criminal enterprise. The idea of a British drug ring in Bali captured media attention. While it's unclear how large or organized the ring truly was, the case left no doubt that Bali was being targeted as a smuggling hub, and the Indonesian government was determined to shut it down. In January 2013, Lindsay Sandiford received the most severe sentence available under Indonesian law: death by firing squad. The verdict shocked observers around the world, especially given the prosecution had only sought a 15-year prison sentence. The judges, however, ruled that Sandiford had damaged the image of Bali as a tourist destination and must face the ultimate penalty. Sandiford appeared calm in court, but was visibly shaken afterward. Human rights groups, including Reprieve and Amnesty International, quickly condemned the decision. They argued that Sandiford's cooperation with authorities, lack of a prior criminal record, and claims of coercion should have warranted leniency. The sentence also reignited debates over capital punishment, especially when applied to foreigners in Southeast Asia. Sandiford's age, mental health, and vulnerability made the ruling even more controversial. Yet Indonesian courts rarely overturn death sentences in drug cases, especially when the amount trafficked is high. While her legal team filed appeals, the clock was ticking. Indonesian firing squads had executed other foreigners for drug crimes before, including members of the infamous Bali Nine. Sandiford now joined their ranks, held on death row, awaiting a final decision that could mean life or death. Despite global backlash, Indonesia refused to soften its stance on drug trafficking. After receiving her death sentence, Lindsay Sandiford turned to the UK government for help, specifically to fund her legal appeal. But the response was swift and cold. No financial assistance would be provided. The Foreign Office cited its long-standing policy of not covering legal fees for British citizens facing criminal charges abroad, even in capital cases. This stance sparked national and international criticism. Many believed the government should make exceptions when a citizen's life is at stake, especially when they claim coercion and have shown cooperation with authorities. The refusal was seen as a failure of diplomatic responsibility. In response, Sandiford's supporters launched a crowdfunding campaign, raising money for her legal fees through donations from the public, charities, and human rights groups like Reprieve. Despite the efforts, funding came slowly, delaying key legal filings and appeals. Meanwhile, British officials said they would continue diplomatic engagement with Indonesia, but stuck firmly to their policy. Critics saw this as a contradiction, condemning the death penalty in public while privately doing little to prevent it in practice. Sandiford's legal battle continued, but under-resourced and under pressure. The UK government's position became a controversial turning point, highlighting the limits of consular support and the precariousness of depending on diplomacy in death penalty cases. Lindsay Sandiford's case triggered a global wave of protest and debate. Human rights organizations, legal experts, and international media condemned the decision to impose the death penalty, calling it cruel and excessive. Supporters argued that her cooperation, lack of prior convictions, and claims of coercion should have spared her from execution. Activists across the UK and Europe launched petitions, wrote letters to Indonesian officials, and held demonstrations outside Indonesian embassies. The case drew comparisons to the Bali Nine, another high-profile drug case that ended in executions despite international outrage. Indonesia, however, held firm. With a domestic drug crisis and public support for strict laws, the government used harsh penalties as a deterrent strategy. President Joko Widodo was particularly vocal about taking a zero-tolerance approach to traffickers, local or foreign. The UK government faced its own backlash for refusing to fund Sandiford's appeal. It highlighted inconsistencies in the West's stance on human rights versus diplomatic action. Sandiford's situation became symbolic, not just of the death penalty debate, but of how governments balance principle and policy when citizens fall foul of foreign laws. Though her execution has not yet been scheduled, Sandiford remains on death row, her fate still uncertain, her case an enduring flashpoint in international justice debates. As of 2025, all three individuals involved in the Bali drug case have reached dramatically different outcomes. Lindsay Sandiford remains on death row in Karabokan Prison, Bali. Despite being sentenced in 2013, she has not yet been executed. Indonesia often delays executions for years due to legal appeals, diplomatic negotiations, or political timing. Sandiford has continued to receive some support from activists and charities, but remains largely isolated. Her health has reportedly declined, and she lives under constant uncertainty. Julian was released in 2018 after serving 5 years of his 6-year sentence. He returned to the UK and has kept a low profile since. There has been no confirmed public statement or interview from him post-release. Rachel Dougall served her 1-year sentence and was deported to the UK upon completion. She has also remained out of the public eye, reportedly returning to private life with her daughter. Despite the time that has passed, Sandiford's status remains unresolved, casting a long shadow over the case. Her continued detention and the possibility of execution keeps the issue alive for human rights organizations and legal observers. For some, she is a victim of a broken system. For others, a cautionary example of the consequences of drug trafficking abroad. Over a decade later, the Bali drug smuggling case remains a potent reminder of how a single decision can alter lives forever. From an airport arrest to international headlines, this story blends law, morality, and diplomacy in a way few cases do. While Ponder and Dougall have served their time and moved on, Lindsay Sandiford's fate still hangs in the balance. Her case continues to stir debate about the death penalty, coerced crime, and the responsibilities of nations to protect their citizens abroad. What's your opinion on this case? Should Sandiford's life be spared? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.